So the Celtics and the Heat, you assume you watched game number 6, the Eastern Conference Finals. There will be a game 7 tonight. This is our Monday show. We kick off the week here. So Monday night, game 7 in Boston. But it's all about game 6. And if you did not watch because you had something going on Saturday in the nighttime hours, you could not watch, whatever, you probably know what happened by now. But if not, former San Antonio Spur Derek White. Who? Derek White. Kind of a generic name. But he made a buzzer beater. Put-back shot with a millisecond, literally a millisecond, before the light went on in the background of the backboard as the clock expired. And Boston extending the Eastern Conference Finals as it will go to the final elimination game, which is wonderful. Wonderful for all involved. And so let us discuss the question. Are the Celtics now guaranteed to win Game 7 at home? They are a sizable favorite on the parquet. And I say no. Despite the bell, I say no. All right? I'll shake my head no. I've got Wikipedia, Southwest Airlines, and Outpatient. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a nice cream pie, a Boston cream pie, which is what the loser of Game 7 will get right to the schnoz. Right there, right to the schnoz. So, nothing is guaranteed. I remember in the playoffs last year, the Dallas Mavericks were playing the Phoenix Suns in a Game 7 in Arizona. It was like, well, Suns are at home. They're going to win that game. It was early in the Western Conference playoffs. How did that turn out? Well, if I remember correctly, the Suns lost that game by 7 gazillion points. I might be off by a few, but it was a completely lopsided game in favor of the road team. Dallas, you know what happens when you assume. Do not assume the position that the Celtics are just going to sashay their way into Game 7 and walk out with a victory. I don't believe that's the case. Now, as far as Game 6, we'll get to more on Game 7, but as far as Game 6, the Celtics won the game that they were supposed to lose in Game 6. That's the story here. Right? And we had mentioned, this validates the take, we had mentioned that the Celtics were incapable of playing 4 consecutive perfect games. And we were right. But they won the game they were supposed to lose. That's the story here. It was not a masterpiece. In Game 6, the Celtics got the fluke win. So that sets them up to now win Game 7, which is not a guarantee, but Game 6 does count as a fluke. The Celtics live and die by the three-point shot. They attempted 35 three-point shots in Game 6 and missed 18 of them. They missed from here, there, and everywhere. They shot 20%, 7 of 35 from three-point range in Game 6. Jason Tatum sucked at a time you cannot suck. In the second half of that game, an elimination game for Boston if they lose, Tatum took 9 shots in the second half. He missed 8 of the 9 in the second half, 0 of 8 from behind the arc in the game, and Boston still wins. That was a classic vanishing act by the star player, the kind of a performance, the kind of stench that would have stuck to Jason Tatum had the outcome been different in that game. But that's a bailout. That's a federal bailout for the Celtics. The bailout, the Derek White bailout plan, all of that gets pushed to the side there because Derek White tipped the ball in to win it at the end. And so that becomes, for many in the media, they've already tagged it a all-time iconic moment in NBA history for the Celtics. But for that to become an all-time iconic moment, the Celtics have to win Monday night, tonight. They have to win Game 7, and they have to win the championship. So even if they win Game 7 and eliminate Miami and get to the finals, and then the Joker laughs at the Celtics and Denver ends up winning the championship, then that Derek White shot's not nearly as cool, right? That anything less, the standard is you've got to win the championship. Anything less than that, and that is a footnote on Derek White's Wikipedia page. And that's it. That's the only place you'll find that will be on the Wikipedia page of Derek White, and there'll be no need to bring it up. You won't need to make a documentary about it 20 years from now or 10 years from now, and there's no need to print T-shirts, and it just moves to the side, right? Moves to the side. That's how that works. But here's the thing. The Celtics should win this series. We picked the Celtics before the series started based on the fact that they have a huge talent gap. And there is a great imbalance. There was a reason Boston was an overwhelming favorite coming into this particular series. The disparity is on their side, and yet they find themselves having to scratch and claw in a Game 7 situation just to advance. But the odds, and I had a buddy of mine mention this to me, the odds were actually worse that Miami would win 3 games in a row against Boston than Boston winning 4 games in a row against Miami. Think about that. I mean, the fact that the Heat won 3 games in a row and we're playing like with silly putty, the Celtics playing the role of the silly putty in that game. Now, meanwhile, you look at the situation. You're big favorite, Game 7 at home, but from the Miami side, page 2 here, from the Miami side, what has gone wrong for the Heat? So the Stars have gone in the darkness, in the witness protection program. So you've got a little bit of that going on. A minimalist effort by the 2 big guns for the Miami Heat of late, and I don't think it's because of any great adjustment by the Celtics. I have not noticed any amazing coaching move by let him play Joe Mazzulla in this series. But listen, Miami's attack has been stripped down, bare bones, and you've got the micro and the macro, as we like to say. So the micro and the macro. Now, we'll start with the micro. Saturday, Miami did not play a complete game. Jimmy Butler made the clutch shots, but he and Bam Adebayo were both guilty of truancy, and it's been that way for the last several games. Butler, in that game on Saturday, 5 of 21, which is less than 24% from the floor for Jimmy buckets. Bam Adebayo, who takes almost all of his shots right near the basket, and he took 16 shots. He missed 12 of them. It's 25%. And those were not contested shots. Most of them were not. Most of them were just old-fashioned brick house type moments there where the shots were just missed, point-blank range. Jimmy Butler from under the basket, where the league average is 66.6%, the sign of the devil that you make 66.6%. Butler shot 20%, right? 20%, 3 of 15 Jimmy Butler shot from the painted area. And you talk about emasculating. And Bam Adebayo, 3 of 13 in that game Saturday in the painted area. And so that's more what has become the norm recently. Still, Miami is in position in Game 6. They're right there. As we mentioned, Boston does not make the outside shot, and Jimmy Buckets makes a bunch, 3 clutch foul shots, and one after another to put Miami ahead. So what was the turning point? What allowed Boston to win the game? Derek White with the putback. Well, nobody's talking about this. We'll be the only ones to talk about it. If you watch the replay, Max Strus for the Miami Heat, outside specialist Max Strus, lost track of the inbounder, and he did not keep himself in front of the person he was supposed to keep himself in front of, and he was trying to keep the ball out of Jason Tatum's hands, but he in the heat of the moment, the way it looked, Strus lost Derek White. He lost Derek White. Jimmy Butler overall has gone into Siberia land here. Over the last 3 games, he's shooting 36% from the floor, 30% from three-point range. So he's been bad. And he's taken 52 shots. He's missed 33 of them. While Jimmy Butler's been on the court, the Heat have been outscored by 44 points by the Celtics. And Bam Adebayo has been a minus 30 on the plus-minus. So both those guys have had Southwest Airlines-type marketing, want to get away fares for both of them. Wowzers. But all of that, much like we talked about with the Celtics, and if they were to lose Game 7 for Miami, all of that gets forgotten if the Heat are victorious on Memorial Day here in Boston and advance to the NBA Finals. Now, the last word here. How can Miami win a Game 7 on the road? We mentioned it's not a guarantee. It's not a foregone conclusion that the Celtics are going to show up and going to win this game. So the question is, how can they win on the road? If you're Miami, well, obviously it's easier said than done, but the key to all of these things, all of the noise and all the nonsense leading up to these games, is to simply be better in the moment. This is not brain surgery. It's not that hard. When all is said and done, more is said than done. But Jimmy Buckets needs to be the outpatient surgeon at the clinic here, work surgically, and put the pressure. The key part to me is to put the pressure on Boston, because if the Heat can hang around and make it a couple of baskets either way for the first part of the game, that puts the pressure mounting on the Celtics. And the great thing about a Game 7 is guys are exposed. They're pantsed. Tight Tookus syndrome. I can't wait, right? Some guys can handle it, some guys can't, and we will find out. We'll all be watching to see who can handle the immense pressure and who crumbles under the spotlight. And oftentimes it's the star players. Like, we all assume Jimmy Butler's going to play well because that's his reputation and all that, but there's no guarantee. Jason Tatum, he's vanished in a number of these games. He vanished in the last game. Boston won anyway. They got the federal bailout plan from Derek White. But fans in Boston will start hissing and booing if the Celtics fall behind, going to the fourth quarter, raising a ruckus, and then that escalates the temperature for the Celtics even more, and then you start the finger pointing and all that. But ultimately, all that matters, who is better in the moment, right? In the moment. And Jimmy Butler can avoid the historical tank being on his playoff Jimmy resume. All of in terms of the overall pressure, right? People have been pressure, this, that. Well, I think that's all a lot of, mostly BS. But in terms of answering the question, there's clearly pressure on both teams. But the cool thing about this game, which is very rare that we get watching these games, is either way, whatever the outcome is a wild story, right? It's a wild story because the majority to me is still on Boston. They're at home. They've won the 3 games to get to a Game 7. They lose this game. If I own the Celtics, I fire Joe Mazzulla. Let him play Joe, because it should have never come to a Game 7. So Mazzulla's job is on the line. We'll start with that.
You're fired.
But he's out, right? He'll go be an assistant somewhere, or coach at the YMCA. I don't know. But Joe Mazzulla's coaching for his career. The whole Miami Heat culture thing gets blown to bits if Miami ends up losing this game. We are already annoyed by that storyline, so that goes away. The loss, as we mentioned earlier in this diatribe, if the Celtics lose, Derek White and his bailout shot are background noise. They're forgotten, right? We forget about that. And with a win, a lot of sins go away. A lot of sins for the Celtics, a lot of sins for the Miami Heat. So that's what's on the line tonight.